Welcome to the Law School Success Series with Lexis. My name is Oscar Cobos, your Lexis research attorney. We will cover organizing your online legal research. My goal is to help you be more effective and efficient legal researchers. Keeping your research organized can be one of the most challenging parts of online legal research. This video will teach you a simple research plan developed to keep you organized through the use of folders and client IDs. In addition, you will learn to overcome common mistakes when applying your research strategies and ensure you feel confident that your research is complete when you put it into practice. So let's get started. On a firm ID, each time you log in, you will be prompted to enter a client ID. This is how firms track research done for an individual client for billing purposes. In law school, you will notice you default to none. As a law student, you are not required to enter an ID to begin. However, it is a good idea to create one as it allows for easy filtering of history, as you will see at the conclusion of this video. If you select Client, the 10 most recent client IDs you have used will populate. A quick research tip: as the system defaults to none, be sure to use this when pulling cases for your doctrinal classes, so that you can easily filter this out at a later point. For now though, you can select Set Add Client ID. Once here, you can enter your client's name or the name of the research project, and you could also add a description. In addition, you could also go see recent client IDs. I have already created the one that we will use for this presentation. As you can see here, Memo, Search and Seizure. I will go ahead and set my client ID, and now you can see in the right-hand corner that the client has been updated. From here, the next step is to set up folders. To access those, click on the vertical dot icon in the right-hand corner and select Folders. From the Folders page, I can view previously created folders, create new folders, and even add subfolders. To create a new folder, select the folder icon with the plus sign. You will then enter the name of that folder and select Save. To add a subfolder, you select the parent folder, then you repeat the process. You will see here I have already set up an example folder. I recommend you do this for each of your assignments. The overall folder should be titled something that easily allows you to identify its purpose. The first thing you want to do is create issue-specific folders. Sometimes you will have more than one issue being dealt with in a single research assignment, and you'll want to create a folder based on your specific issue. For example, you will see that we have one for the issue of what constitutes a search and seizure, and the second one is search and seizure of a cell phone. You will also want to create a primary to review folder. Follow that up with a secondary to review folder. In addition, you will want to create a not applicable folder and an opposing side folder. As you can see, I have not yet created that one, so let's go ahead and create it. All of these folders will help you keep your research organized. Please note that you can always add more folders as you go. So for example, if you find an applicable test, you can add a folder for each prong of the test to that issue folder. You are in effect building a digital outline for your research via the folders. Once organized, you will want to start your research with what you know. If you were given a case or a statute, start with that. Go to secondary materials if you are not giving anything to begin your research. There will be a subsequent optional training on research strategies depending on what you know later this semester. For now, we will start with secondary materials. So, let's say you've been tasked with drafting a memo regarding the legality of a search and seizure of a cell phone. We will begin by looking broadly for search and seizure. Secondary materials like treatises, jurisprudence, practice guides, and restatements are great places to start your research. They explain the law and often link to relevant primary case law. Once you have your results, select the category section. Filter to secondary materials, select category, and select treatises. The next thing you'd want to do is search within results. Here we will search for cell phone. Finally, I will use the jurisdiction filter and filter to U.S. federal only. Your results are sorted by relevance. That does not mean, however, that the number one result will be the best. Review the first 10 to 20 search results. In this case, however, the title of the first result is something we'll want to check, so we'll access this document. The benefits of secondary materials is that they explain the law. You, however, do not cite to them. You cite to primary, like statutes and case law, which may be binding on a court. A common mistake that researchers run into is that once they access a secondary source, they identify a primary law they want to look at. So, for example, the Fourth Amendment. And then they'll directly click on it, leaving the secondary source behind and not finish reading it. They'll also open numerous other primary sources in new tabs and fail to read them, or if they review them, they will not remember why they opened them in the first place. The best way to overcome this is that when you are reading your secondary sources, if you come to something you want to view, like the Fourth Amendment, right-click and open in a new tab. Once you navigate to the new tab, select the folder icon. From there, you will want to select Choose a Folder. The reason you want to select Choose a Folder is because that will allow you not only to select the appropriate folder you want to place your document in, but will also let you input a note onto why you are saving this particular document. So from here, you could type your note and then come down here, and because this is the Constitution, it is going to go in the Primary to Review folder. Select that and save. Once foldered, close the tab and return to your secondary source and continue reading. Now I am going to use the Term button to search sections discussing cell phone. As you'll see at the top of the document, I can click that and I will see there are 46 mentions of cell phone. Go ahead and select it, and then you can use the little arrows to navigate to those search results. As you navigate these terms, you might come across a portion that discusses anything that might be relevant to you. Perhaps I come upon this section where it is discussing that the SCA doesn't grant the right to cell phone data to the police. These green buttons are footnotes, so if you select one of those, you will jump to the base. Once you jump to the base, find the relevant footnote, open in a new tab, and we will repeat the process that we just did. Once that case opens up, select the folder icon, and again, I will select Choose a Folder, despite having the Primary to Review folder here. The reason I select Choose a Folder is because I want to note why I am saving this document. Once I input my note, I can go ahead and save it to the Primary to Review folder. Once you get to the end, you can navigate to the result list and see if any other documents there are on point. Once we get to the point where we think we have the base understanding of what we need, navigate to folders. Through the earlier process, you should have added a lot of documents to your Primary and Secondary to Review folders. These folders have become a to-do list, so you'll want to start reviewing. To do so, you'll access the parent folder. From there, you'll want to start by accessing the secondary materials by doing the same process we did earlier. Reading the secondary sources that were cited and the ones we viewed, adding any primary law, and returning to these folders. Having said that we've done that step, we next move on to view primary. You'll see we have a list of cases and statutes we added with notations as to why we saved them. We then want to access the document and read it to see if it is relevant. You'll see we have a list of cases and statutes we added with notations as to why we saved them. We then want to access the document and read it to see if it is relevant. While reading, we can annotate and highlight noting sections that are beneficial to us or not. Upon completing your reading, you'll find your initial note at the bottom. At this point, you have to determine whether you will cite to it. Either A, it is beneficial to you, B, it is beneficial to the opposing side, or it is something that is not relevant. Through reading, you would have determined that this is discussing cell phone data for location, not searches for the cell phone itself. Next, based on the knowledge you've gained from reading the case, you'd want to go ahead and edit your note accordingly. After reading this case, you'd realize that this case is not relevant. So next, we're going to move it to the appropriate folder by selecting the arrow at the top. In this case, because it is not discussing cell phones physically, but rather data, we'll add it to not applicable. You'll continue walking this process with the rest of your materials and moving them to the appropriate folder until you get to the point that you don't have any cases left to review. Having worked your way through your review list, you should have refined the legal terms for a great search. You'll now want to run a search and review the cases. You should notice that you already found many of the cases and read them, as indicated by the glasses icon next to the name of the case. You'll also notice a folder icon next to those cases which you have already foldered. Select that and you will see the exact folder where you placed this case. If you had not used this process earlier, you maybe would have only noticed the glasses icon and reread the case not knowing you had already identified it as not applicable. This will save you a lot of time, especially if you return to your search at a later point. This method can also help you determine when your research is complete. When you begin to see all the cases you foldered being cited by other cases, and when each of your issues and test folders that you created and moved cases to have cases associated with them, you are likely approaching a stopping point. A final benefit of this search method is picking up where you left off or quickly reviewing your overall research trail. Lexis will save history for 90 days and it can be accessed in the upper right. When you click History, you will be given a list view of all the searches and documents and actions you have taken over the last 90 days. Another useful tool to see your history is the Research Map. Select History and then Research Map. This is a graphical representation of your research trails. On the left-hand side, you can filter to a specific client. This will also allow you to see what research you did for a particular class if you went ahead and set up an ID for that particular class. Another good tip is that when you complete your research, filter to your client and then change the date range which you researched and save that map to your overall folder. What we see here are the searches we ran, any categories accessed, filters added, and documents viewed. We could also quickly identify whether or not we accessed a particular document. Another helpful piece about the research map is that it can allow you to sit down with a professor and TA, and this could be used to discuss where you can improve your search and so forth. So, in review, when starting a research assignment, create a client ID and folder with subfolders for issues, secondary and primary materials to review, not applicable, and opposing side. When applying your research strategy, right-click and open in a new window any links you would like to review. Save those with a note to the proper folder, and then immediately close that tab and return to your initial document. After completing your research, work your way through the to-do list of documents you built, moving them into the proper folder based upon your review of them. And finally, run a final term search and review your search map to make sure you didn't miss anything. Hopefully this will help you stay organized. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about what was covered today, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. My contact information can be found on the Lexis for Law School homepage.